Buckingham Palace, official London residence of Britain's sovereign since 1837, is probably one of the world's most famous addresses and has an outside that is familiar to all and an inside that is wrapped in mystery. Its quadrangle and grand entrance is the ceremonial centrepiece for the nation's welcome, be it to kings, queens, presidents or diplomats. And it also provides the same welcome when, for a score or more days a year, the doors of the grand entrance are open to recipients and their guests to receive their honour at the investiture ceremony.
And once more, down towards the camera now, good.
Nowadays, tens of thousands of people see the staterooms and gardens either as guests to one of the series of summer garden parties or as visitors to the summer opening every August and September. But very few get this special invitation. At 8 o'clock in the morning, London is already alive to another working day. And for the select 130 men and women who are anxiously making their way to the capital, it's the culmination of many weeks of preparation. It's the day of their investiture at Buckingham Palace. Preparations at the palace are well underway. Everything in the staterooms, including the ballroom, scene of many state and official occasions and where today's investiture will take place, are given detailed and careful attention. A short walk from Buckingham Palace across Green Park at St James's Palace is the Central Chancery. It's part of the Lord Chamberlain's office and is responsible for administering the orders of chivalry and maintaining the records of all appointments, promotions and deaths within the order. They also take the lead in organising investitures and the sending out of invitations together with warrants signed by the Queen.
Tomorrow's investiture, are they still all coming?
Yes, still 122 recipients.
Lovely, and 353 guests.
Right.
2 wheelchair recipients?
Mr. Thomas has rung in since we did the list and asked for a wheelchair for himself.
Right.
So if we can do that.
3 wheelchair recipients, 4 wheelchair guests.
That's right.
And any changes to names or pronunciations?
That's the list of pronunciations the Lord Chamberlain has asked for. And Mrs. Al-Taib would like to be called Griselda rather than Dorothy.
Oh, right, thank you. I must make sure I amend the Lord Chamberlain's copy accordingly.
Following the compilation of the New Year and the Queen's Birthday Honours lists, the details of the awards are first checked against records held by the Central Chancery before being sent out for publication in the London Gazette. When the various insignia arrive from the manufacturers, each decoration is very carefully scrutinised for blemishes and then stored in the Central Chancery's vaults to await its recipient. At 10 o'clock precisely, Buckingham Palace's gates are open to the recipients and their guests, while up in the ballroom, final checks are made by the Secretary of the Central Chancery of the Order of Knighthood, Lieutenant Colonel Robert Cartwright.
1 KCMG, 2 Knights Bachelor, 1 CB Military, 1 CB Civil, 1 CMG, 1 CVO ladies, number L111. L111, correct.
20 investitures are held at Buckingham Palace each year, 9 in the spring, 2 in the summer, usually in July, and 9 more in the autumn, although this can vary from year to year. For most of those receiving an honour, this is probably the first and only time in their lives they will be received by the Queen in the ballroom at Buckingham Palace. The honour system and the concept of the investiture as we know it today is relatively new, given that the history of the monarchy spans over 1,000 years. Honours for chivalry have been around for centuries, but it was largely due to the Queen's grandfather, George V, who, in 1917, established the Order of the British Empire, so that honours could be more widely given to deserving citizens from all walks of life, men and women, for their contribution to the war effort. With the ending of the First World War and the armistice in 1918, the King extended the range of recipients to include those from the world of science, the arts and literature, as well as the voluntary and charitable sectors. It is the staff from the Central Chancery and the Lord Chamberlain's office who are there to ensure that the recipients are in the right place at the right time. The Lord Chamberlain, as head of the Queen's household, is responsible for recommending to the Queen candidates to fill senior appointments and coordinating the activities of the private offices of other members of the Queen's immediate family. This he does by holding weekly board meetings. Meanwhile, the controller in the Lord Chamberlain's office, Sir Malcolm Ross, is responsible for organising great royal events, such as inward state visits, the Garter ceremony at Windsor, weddings and funerals. He is also responsible for the Central Chancery, Lords-in-Waiting, Gentlemen-at-Arms, the Yeomen of the Guard, the Company of Archers in Scotland, the Marshal of the Diplomatic Corps, and some exotic figures like the Queen's Barge Master and Royal Waterman. The Lord Chamberlain's office also supervises the annual swan-upping of the Queen's swans on the River Thames. The investiture is a very special occasion, and each recipient will take away an impression of magnificent sights and sounds that will be long remembered and talked about. Part of that sense of occasion is given by the Yeomen of the Guard arriving here from their headquarters at St James's Palace. Created by Henry VIII in 1485 after his victory at the Battle of Bosworth Field, they are not only the oldest of the royal bodyguards, having given long, faithful and continuous service to the sovereign for over 500 years, but they're also the oldest military corps in the United Kingdom and probably the world. There is no doubt that investitures are stage managed with military precision. Each recipient must be in the right place at the right time, be briefed as to what to expect when reaching the dais and what to do once the honour has been presented. The timing is well rehearsed and must be accurate for it all to begin at 11 o'clock. The Green Drawing Room, the first of the state rooms at the top of the grand staircase, is richly furnished and includes chairs made in the 1820s for Windsor Castle. It is just one of the many staterooms frequently used for receptions. But today, while the room is ready and the props are set, there is time for new knights to get acquainted.
Could I ask you to go round to that end of the room, please, ladies and gentlemen, and I will tell you what's going to happen. Having got my props in the right place, more or less the right place.
Their briefing is carried out by the controller of the Lord Chamberlain's office, Lieutenant Colonel Sir Malcolm Ross.
Let us imagine that I've been waiting in this room on the far side of the ballroom, in a queue, working my way up. I'm now the head of the queue, standing in a doorway, looking out into the ballroom. Ballroom stretches left and right, and you're rather the left-hand end of it, the business end of it. And from your position here in this doorway, you see out central and on a dais in the middle of the room is the Queen. To your right, seated and watching you, your guests, and standing beside you in this doorway, Mr. de Montfort from my office, who for the last time, I promise you, will check your name. He will also, at the right moment, ask you to go forward into the ballroom. And when you're asked to go forward into the ballroom, walk up to the gentleman usher and stop. Listen, please, for your name. On hearing your surname, ignore anything that follows, continue across the room. When you're nicely in the middle, stop, turn to face the Queen, little curtsy or bow, and move straight forward. Now, for three of you, the stool will be in position. We ask you to go down onto the stool on your right knee, and how we recommend you do that, stop behind it, take the handrail in your right hand, put your left foot outside the left-hand side, just lower yourself onto your right knee. It's a nice, comfortable position, and it looks very much better if your head is up than your head is down. The Queen will tap you on the shoulder, both shoulders, with the sword, but she says nothing. So once you've received the accolade on both shoulders, please stand up and come around to the left-hand side of the stool, but still staying on the floor, not going onto the dais. Okay, that's got you three knighted. The others, I'm afraid it's not today. The stool won't be there. Just come straight forward and stop in front of the Queen.
George IV's original palace lacked a large room for state and official entertaining, but Queen Victoria rectified that shortcoming by adding the ballroom in the mid-1850s, first used in 1856 for a grand ball to celebrate the ending of the Crimean War. These days, it is one of the rooms used for the annual diplomatic reception attended by 1,500 guests, ambassadors, diplomats and their wives accredited to the court of St. James's. It is also the setting for state banquets, concerts and performances of the arts. Way back in 1856, it had the distinction of being the largest room in London, but today it is just the largest room in Buckingham Palace. At 122 feet long, 60 feet wide and 45 feet high, the ballroom could, with clever stacking, accommodate 56 double-decker London buses.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. May I start by asking if there is anyone in this room who is due to receive an award? No one? Good. Because if there had been, they would have been in entirely the wrong place. You may by now have read a little of what goes on at an investiture in your blue book, but I thought it might be of interest if I gave a little bit more detail now that you're settled in the ballroom itself. Some 22 investitures are held each year, and on some occasions the Queen is represented by the Prince of Wales. Investitures in London are always held here in this ballroom, which is also used on state occasions, such as state banquets. Shortly after I have finished speaking, 5 yeomen of the Queen's bodyguard, of the Yeomen of the Guard, will enter the ballroom and take up their positions on this dais. The Yeomen of the Bodyguard are the oldest royal bodyguard in the world, having been founded in 1485 in the reign of King Henry VII. At 11 o'clock, the Queen and her party will enter the ballroom by the door on my left, escorted by 2 Gurkha orderly officers, a custom instituted by Queen Victoria in 1876. Would you please stand when Her Majesty's party enters the ballroom? The string orchestra of the band of the Coldstream Guards on the balcony behind you under the direction of Major Graham Jones, will play the national anthem. Please remain standing until Her Majesty bids you be seated. The investiture then begins. The Lord Luce, the Lord Chamberlain, announces the name of each recipient who will enter through the door on my right. After being invested, the recipients will leave through the door on my left and then re-enter at the back of the ballroom to take their seats behind you. Please remain seated throughout, otherwise those behind you won't see a lot. And could I also ask you to keep your conversation down, because otherwise people might not hear the names being called out by the Lord Chamberlain. And however great your admiration for any particular recipient, could I ask you please not to applaud. At the end of the ceremony, the Lord Chamberlain will come forward and will stand in front of the Queen, just about there. This is the signal for all to stand while the band once again plays the national anthem. The Queen will leave the ballroom via the central aisle and the door through which you all entered. After Her Majesty has withdrawn, would you please leave the ballroom by the way you came in? Your friends and relatives who have been decorated today will meet you at the back of the ballroom as you leave. There are today 114 ladies and gentlemen for investiture, and the ceremony will take about 1¼ hours. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you enjoy the moment.
Before the ballroom became the centre for state entertaining, Queen Victoria used the picture gallery for large banquets. It's 155 feet long, the length of 2 tennis courts, and was designed by John Nash, as were many of the staterooms, for George IV to display his outstanding collection of Dutch and Flemish pictures, many of which still hang here. When completed by Nash in the late 1820s, it lacked good light and therefore was not a great success as a gallery built to display fine works of art. And it wasn't until 1914, under Queen Mary's guidance, that it was remodelled to include natural daylight and top lighting, which is how we see it today. There are pictures here that were collected by Charles I, Frederick Prince of Wales, eldest son of George II, by George III, George IV, and Queen Victoria.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. Would you like to sort yourselves out so that you could all see and hear?
With a skill mastered from years of experience, Lieutenant Colonel Malcolm Ross calms any apprehension and nerves with good humour and sound advice.
Use your knees, elbows. Go on, kick your way to the front. Right, last chance. Can everybody see and hear? What I'm going to do, as I say, is tell you what is going to happen. It is very simple, absolutely straightforward. Relax. There's nothing to worry about. How many of you have come to Buckingham Palace and paid money to come round in the summer when we're open? 3, 4, 6 out of you lot. Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. We lay it all on for you, and we do it for money. And we open on the 28th of July this year, so book early. For those who haven't been here in the summer, I'll have to tell you where you are. Okay, where are you? Now in the picture gallery. The picture gallery is the spine. It's the middle of Buckingham Palace. It runs up the middle of all the staterooms. And it's here we're going to ask you to wait until it's your turn to go to the ballroom for your investiture, because the investiture takes place in the ballroom, which is down at that end of the palace. And we take you there in groups of about 10 or 12 at a time. Firstly, those to whom I've just been talking in the green drawing room, then those in this half of the picture gallery, and one of you, I'm afraid, has got to be last. But we'll work about that later. We go out of that door that's open at the end. We go down the east gallery, and at the far end of the east gallery, we find the ballroom. We don't stop there. We go through the ballroom, because it's from the far side of the ballroom, as seen from here, that you emerge as individuals to be invested by the Queen. And what happens when it's your turn is probably best described if I walk myself through it, and you please imagine that it is you. You're in the ballroom. I'm standing in this doorway, waiting to get my turn. I've been in this room on the far side of the ballroom, in a queue, working my way up. I'm now at the head of the queue, standing in the doorway, looking out, as I say, into the ballroom. It's not unlike this. It's a big room, stretching left and right, but it's a very different proportion. And you're standing at the left-hand end, the business end of it. From your position here, you see out in the middle of the room, on a shallow dais, is the Queen. She's surrounded by some of the household. Those who you will notice immediately on this side of the Queen is her equerry, who will be reminding her of you as you approach. On this side of the equerry, with a lectern and microphone, the Lord Chamberlain, who read out your name. More of that in a moment. Roughly in front of the Lord Chamberlain, and on the edge of the red carpet stretching out from where you are, Air Vice Marshal David Hawkins left, a gentleman usher to the Queen. That is he. This is his big moment. All right. All right. To your right, seated and watching you, your guests, and standing beside you in this doorway, an official from my office who, for the last time, I promise you, will check your name. He will also, at the right moment, ask you to go forward into the ballroom. When you're asked to go forward into the ballroom, walk up to the gentleman usher and stop. Listen, please, on hearing your surname. Ignore anything that follows. Walk to the middle of the room. Stop. Turn to face the Queen. Curtsy or bow. Straight away move forward to the dais. The Queen is on the dais. You do not go onto the dais. But will you get nice and close? Because by then she'll be holding your medal. She wants to give you your medal, to put it onto you, and she can't do that if you're standing 4.5 feet from her. So come nice and close and stop. As I say, she will immediately put your medal onto you. Most of you have got hooks here. Ladies, onto that hook the Queen will put a brooch. Gentlemen, onto that hook the Queen will put a medal. Some in this half have no hook. Gentlemen, not because we have forgotten, but because you're going to receive a neck decoration. If you are to receive a neck decoration, it goes over your head and hangs around your neck, and it helps the Queen at that stage if you would slightly incline your head to allow her to put it over the top. And while she's doing that, she talks to you, and you respond. She will then shake your hand. It is a firm and positive handshake. You will not miss it. It is also the indication that your time is up. So if you're halfway through volume 2 of what you've been up to, that's as far as you go. Having had your hand shaken, take a few paces backwards, stop for another little curtsy or bow, so none of that close to the Queen, and off you go. All quite happy? Any questions? None at all?
How do we address the Queen?
Thank you, sir, very much. How do you address the Queen? How are you going to address the Queen, ma'am? Aha! Yeah. If you're going for it, it is Your Majesty first time, and then ma'am. But it is ma'am, please, and not ma'am, in spite of what the newspaper said this week. It is jam, and not marmalade. Ma'am, ma'am, ma'am. Okay, all happy? Follow the one in front, just like school prize giving. Did you win a prize at school? You did. There you are again. But if you're following a lady, chaps, be careful. Thank you very much indeed.
The scene is set, the briefings are over, and the investiture is about to begin. It is 11 o'clock.
Gentlemen, please be seated.
Clearly, it is the dream of millions throughout the United Kingdom to one day meet the Queen. Sadly for the majority, it is just a dream, while for the few today, it's a reality. The Queen meets people from all sectors of the community when out and about on visits throughout the land, and clearly enjoys meeting such diverse groups. But an investiture like this enables her to meet high achievers and exceptional people from all walks of life. Sir Winston Churchill once said, "The object of presenting medals, stars and ribbons is to give pride and pleasure to those who deserve them." On view throughout the palace is a treasure trove of art that establishes the royal collection as one of the major collections in the world today. There is a feast of fine paintings by such great European masters as Rubens, Vermeer, Rembrandt, Van Dyck, Poussin, Zuccarelli and Canaletto. There can be few waiting rooms in the world that offer their visitors such a wonderful display of original art as these staterooms give today's recipients and their guests.
The most excellent order of the British Empire to be commanders, military division, the most honourable order of the Bath to be a captain, military division, Royal Victorian Order to be a commander, distinguished order of St. Michael and St. Paul to be companions.
Honours and awards are not given lightly. They've been justly earned, and the investiture ceremony is the country's acknowledgement of that particular achievement. Many countries in the world today have honours and awards of one sort or another, but nowhere is the bestowing of titles and decorations performed in such splendid surroundings and with such grace, style and ceremony.
Mr. Graham Sutcliffe for services to the arts in Vietnam and to Anglo-Vietnamese cultural relations.
Investitures are traditional, and I'm always absolutely fascinated by the people who come and all the things that they've done, and they all have different reactions. They all can tell you something different, and if you ask the right questions, or if if you know a little bit about what happens there, you can always. It is always different. Some of them are very cleverly discovered. I think that's very important. The system does discover people who do unsung things, that that perhaps the local people know about, but nobody else does. And I think that's very satisfactory. One mustn't have a long conversation, obviously, because you would never finish. The question you ask is what is you hope that you're going to get the answer that you want. Some say that this is for the people I work with. It's a representation rather than for themselves, which is also nice. This is also meant to be a pat on the back. And I think people need pats on the back sometimes. It's a very dingy world otherwise.
Each investiture ceremony lasts a little over an hour and brings together not only those whose achievements may have been brought to our attention by the media, but also those who have not sought publicity, but brought to the fore by the investiture ceremony. As today's investiture comes to an end, there can be little doubt that the day will have given lasting pride and pleasure to all.
Unbelievable. You can't describe how you feel. It really chokes you up. A fantastic day and so well organised, it's unbelievable.
Oh, she was very relaxed and able to ask one or two questions about what I did. Tremendous atmosphere, tremendous occasion.
I thought it was wonderful that she had the apt question to ask. You're in a world of your own at that moment. You're not part of the ceremony at all. It's just the Queen and you.
I think it's very rare to see a palace operating in the way that those great paintings show you palaces operated in the last century and the century before that. And I think it's the spectacle. Plus, I think meeting some very special people.
It's nice to be recognised for anything you do, but to be recognised at this level is particularly important. It's something that's unique to what you've done, and therefore it's that wee bit different. It's not something you can buy. You can even buy a flight now to the moon, but you can't buy a flight in here.
It was marvellous, yes. It was a great experience for myself and my family, yes, marvellous. Well looked after. Everybody's very friendly, but everybody at their ease, yeah.
She was so gracious, so absolutely marvellous. And in old daughter herself, she said, it gives me particular pleasure to make these awards. Yeah, so it was lovely, yeah.
Mm-hmm.